Good morning, dear students. I hope all of you might have read the chapter Weathering the Storm in Ersama once again. So, you must have understood the chapter clearly. So, today we are going to discuss the question answers of the chapter. Let us see the first question. What havoc has the super cyclone wreaked in the life of the people of Odisha? So we know that in the story, the writer has described about the destruction, caused by the super cyclone in the life of the people of Odisha. So what could be the answer of this question? After the super cyclone, raising deadly brown sheet of water covered everything. Only some fractured cement houses still stood in a few places. Bloated animal carcasses and human corpses floated in every direction. Even the huge old trees had fallen down when Prasant, the main character of this story, he is the main protagonist, who is a teenager. He went towards his village along with two friends of his uncle. The scenes they witnessed grew more and more horrid. They had to push away many human bodies and carcasses of dogs, goats, and cattle. They could barely see a house standing. All the houses had been washed away. So, this is the answer of this question. Now, moving on to the next question. The next question is, how has Prasant, a teenager, been able to help the people of his village? In the story, we find that Prasant helped the people, like anything, of his village by first getting a grip over himself, because he was initially shocked on witnessing the after effects of the cyclone. He decided to step in as the leader of his village. He organized a group of youths and elders to jointly pressurize the merchant to give rice for the people living in the shelter. He was successful in this task. His next task was to organize a team of youth volunteers to clean the shelter and to tend to the wounds of the people who had been injured because of the cyclone. Prasant also brought a number of orphan children together and constructed a polythene shelter for them, while women were mobilized to look after them. The man secured food and other essentials for the shelter. When he realized that women were becoming too grief stricken, he persuaded them to start working in the food for work program, which was initiated by an NGO. He also organized sports events for children. So this is the answer of this question. Now moving on to the next question. The next question is, how have the people of community help one another? What role do the women of Kalikuda play during these days? So the people of the community help one another by joining hands under the leadership of Prasant. They jointly pressurized the merchant to give rice as everybody was starving. A fire was lighted to cook the rice. It was the first time after the cyclone had hit the area that everyone ate their, meal. A team of youth volunteers was organized to clean the shelter and to tend to the wounds and fractures of the people who had been injured because of the cyclone. Now, when the military helicopter dropped some food parcels but did not return, the youth task force gathered empty utensils from the shelter and deputed the children to lie in the sand with these utensils on their stomachs to communicate to the passing helicopters that they were hungry. The women of Kalikuda looked after the orphan children, though they became grief stricken after a few days. On Prasant's insistence, they also started working in the Food for Work program started by an NGO. Now, this is the answer of this question. Now, moving on to the next question. The next question is, what do Prasant and other volunteers resist the plan to set up institutions for orphans and widows? Why alternatives do they consider? So Prasant and the volunteers, they resisted the plan to set up institutions for orphans and widows because they felt that in such institutions children would grow up without love and the widows would suffer from stigma and loneliness. Prasant's group believed that orphans should be resettled in their community itself, possibly in new foster families made up of childless widows and children without adult care. Now, moving on to the next question. The next question is, do you think Prasan is good leader? Do you think young people can get together to help people during natural calamities? Yes, we find that Prasant is a very good leader. He had a leadership quality, and though he himself was too grief stricken, he got a hold of himself and decided to step in as the leader of the village. He carried out his role effectively and helped the people of his village in every possible manner. Uh, Yes, you can write in that way. Young people can definitely get together to help people during natural calamities, and otherwise, they can use their strength and vigor to help people. Now, the last question is, in adversity, people like Prasant get extraordinary determination and power to fight. Do you agree that adversity or crisis brings people closer? Yes, it is true that some people like Prasant get some extraordinary powers in adverse conditions. They become heroes. In the story, it was extraordinary courage and strong determination that made Prasant go to his house to seek his family. He covered his 18 kilometer long journey with great difficulty. There was a leader in him. Although he was a teenager, he had a special quality of taking initiatives. He helped all the people like anything, and one during during the disaster, he organized a team of volunteers to help the victims of super cyclone in Orissa. And adversity or crisis also brings people together. There is a bond of humanity. The victims of cyclone in Ersama help one another. They worked together during their resettlement and they took care of orphans and widows, and Prasan managed to unite them and work for one another. So these are the question answers of this chapter. I hope all of you have now understood the answers of these questions. So this much for today. So I'll be sharing the answers of these questions with you all. So all of you must write down all the questions